Greetings, friend. I'm sincerely thankful you're taking a moment to watch this. If you're moved to subscribe, just know it would genuinely lift my spirits. Now let's begin. It started with an accident, a click that revealed a betrayal deeper than he could have imagined. His wife, entangled with a man he once called brother. For 10 years, they'd celebrated birthdays together, spent holidays side by side, shared drinks and secrets. That bond, it turned out, had always been one-sided. And when the veil lifted, he didn't shout or scream. He vanished. And when he resurfaced, it wasn't with anger. It was with calm, surgical clarity. This wasn't about payback. It was about equilibrium, methodical, subtle, and unseen. No one saw it coming. Nate Callahan had always seen his life as satisfyingly uncomplicated, the kind of stability men come to value with age. His modest home in suburban Virginia was neat and unassuming. His marriage? He thought it was unshakable. His sons, Mason and Eli, were his pride, quick-witted, sharp, always challenging each other. Camille, his wife of 16 years, had been a gentle presence, a full-time mother by choice. Nate, meanwhile, poured himself into financial compliance. Spreadsheet monotony, midnight emails, the quiet grind of a man no one noticed unless he made a mistake. Then Tuesday arrived, and everything unraveled. He wasn't digging. He had no suspicions. He simply wanted an old vacation photo from Savannah. Their cloud storage was chaotic, so he searched Savannah and scrolled. That's when he saw it, a folder titled Private. He clicked, curious but not alarmed. Hidden between random snapshots were videos, ones he didn't remember recording. He opened the first, and the world stopped. It showed their bedroom. Camille was there, but the hand smoothing her hair wasn't his. Nor was the low voice whispering to her. The man laughing softly behind the camera, Jeremy Holt, his best friend, the same Jeremy who coached Mason's baseball team, the one who toasted their anniversary with Nate's arm around Camille and a drink held high. That Jeremy. Nate's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was disintegration. Each video peeled back a layer of his life until it felt unrecognizable. The timestamps told the real story. This wasn't a one-time lapse. It was a secret life running parallel to his own. One clip dated back to the week his father died, when Camille had claimed she needed space at her sister's place. He rose from his office chair like a man surfacing after too long underwater. In the living room, Camille was folding laundry. It could have been any Tuesday, but not this one. He silently held out his phone. She glanced down, blinked, sat without a word. "How long?" he asked. "Since before Eli turned 10, she replied flatly. "No regret?" he pressed. "I didn't plan for it to last." He stared at her. Something within him went still. It wasn't rage. It was a quiet shutdown as clean as a scalpel's cut. No yelling, no chaos, just movement. He packed a weekend bag, 2 pairs of jeans, 5 shirts, and left. The next morning, he filed for separation. No dispute over property, no custody battles, no public accusations. But he didn't disappear. He began collecting statements, receipts, metadata. This wasn't about fixing the marriage. It was about precision. While Camille and Jeremy flaunted their relationship, public outings, school events, weekend getaways, Nate remained silent. But in that silence, something sharp was forming. He didn't want closure. He wanted reckoning. His family didn't get it. One night over wine, his sister Heather said, "You just left." Jeremy filled the space you left open. He set his glass down. "He filled a bed that wasn't his. Let's not rewrite what this is." "You're overreacting," she muttered. He leaned in. "I hope you never walk in to find your husband with your sister in your own bed. Then we'll talk." She never mentioned it again. He stayed present for Mason and Eli. Every game, every school meeting, every milestone. He never missed a moment. Jeremy, meanwhile, smiled from the sidelines like nothing happened. Camille carried on, graceful and composed, as though she hadn't torched the life they'd built. The betrayal lingered, not loud but constant, in the quiet moments, in the empty spaces. But Nate wasn't finished. True revenge doesn't shout, it watches, it calculates, it lands. He didn't leave for retribution. He left to breathe. After 20 years of loyalty and a betrayal that shattered him, he moved into a modest rental outside Charlottesville. 2 bedrooms, a leaky faucet, just enough room for his favorite recliner. But it was honest, clean, his. He structured his days with discipline. Up at 5 a.m., 3-mile run, cold showers, black coffee, work, sleep. It wasn't glamorous. It was real. Mason and Eli came every other weekend. He never spoke a single ill word about Camille. Never brought up Jeremy. He listened to their laughter, watched them game, heard them whisper about girls. And every time they mentioned Camille and Jeremy as if everything was normal, he swallowed the bile quietly. Jeremy had stepped into his family's life not as a villain, but as a new fixture, a mentor, a presence. But Nate said nothing. His answer wouldn't come through arguments. It would come through legacy. He had always been strategic. Over the years, he'd quietly built his assets, diversified portfolios, shell companies, overseas holdings. During the divorce, he didn't contest. Camille got the house. She received joint assets. Her lawyer called the agreement generous. She cried. Jeremy held her hand. Nate simply nodded. He'd already moved on, financially and tactically. Within 6 months, he sold what little he retained domestically. The rest had long since been shifted, hidden in trusts, aliases, overseas accounts. He took up remote consulting work. Then, without saying a word, he left the country. He flew to Uruguay, a place where U.S. alimony enforcement meant nothing. There, outside Punta del Este, he bought a villa, quiet, private, far from the ruins of his old life. Back in Virginia, Camille called. Again and again. Where was the money? He picked up once. "Ask your new husband," he said, then hung up. More calls followed, legal threats, notices. None worked. She filed urgent motions. Judges shrugged. No jurisdiction. Nate had done the work. Every step covered, every loophole closed. Eventually, her resources dried up. She walked away from the house she once flaunted like a trophy, moved into a modest rental, took a sales job at a small boutique downtown, lasted 3 weeks, then handed in her notice. Meanwhile, Nate began waking up without the usual heaviness pressing on his chest. The anxiety was gone. So was the constant tension. No more worrying who she was texting while stirring sauce at the stove. His Thursdays were spent by the lake. Sundays he painted. He learned to cook meals that didn't come from a box. He never looked back. Until the phone rang. Eli called first. "Mom's not doing so great," he said. "You've made your point. Isn't it time to move forward?" Nate was calm. Was my point made in the decade I stayed silent while she lied? Or was it when I protected you both from the truth you deserved to know? "She raised us," Eli said. "And I paid for everything along the way," Nate replied. "Books, checkups, lunches. I was there. That doesn't mean I disappear." He paused, then added, voice cool and flat. "She disappeared first when she let Jeremy into our lives. I'm just taking her cue." Later, Mason called from college. "Can't you at least talk to her?" "No," Nate said plainly. "She says you're out to ruin her life." A dry laugh escaped him. "She ruined it the moment she gave it to someone who never earned it." "She's really struggling." "Then maybe Jeremy should have come with a pension plan." After that, the calls became fewer, briefer, strained. Still, Nate kept paying tuition, sent birthday cards, picked out books he knew they'd enjoy. But the warmth was gone. He didn't hold it against them. They were still young, still trying to make sense of how the mother who kissed them goodnight was the same one who tore their father apart in silence. Nate was patient. Life had taught him one lesson well. The truth doesn't stay buried. By the 2nd year, Uruguay had become home. Nate Callahan never set out to vanish from his sons' lives. But after Mason forgot his birthday for the 3rd time, after Eli accused him twice of being spiteful, and after the first, Jeremy's more of a dad than you ever were. Nate let go. He wasn't angry anymore, he just stopped hurting. Meanwhile, Camille and Jeremy's romance collapsed faster than expected. They had no savings, no roadmap. Jeremy lost his job half a year in, and what was once a thriving construction business had crumbled into dust. He spent his days lost in true crime marathons while Camille worked long shifts at a salon she once mocked. Nate didn't gloat. Their downfall brought him no joy. Even those who break your heart don't deserve cruelty, but he didn't rescue them either. Back at his villa, Nate's life found a quiet rhythm. He rented out guest space during tourist season, wrote finance advice for online publications, mentored young entrepreneurs around the globe. He built a circle of thinkers who didn't know or care about his past. He wasn't hiding. He was healing. It was never about making Camille hurt. It was about recovering the pieces of himself. Still, even paradise had echoes. Some nights he'd wake at 2 a.m., hearing Mason as a child, asking for another bedtime story. Or he'd dream of Camille, laughing with Jeremy in the old kitchen, while he stood outside in the rain, knocking on a window no one opened. On those nights, he sat beneath the stars, listening to waves and wondering whether closure was real or just something we say when we're finally too tired to grieve. Then a message arrived, a faded photo from Mason, Nate in his younger days, smiling wide as he held toddler Eli in his arms. "I don't remember this day," the message said, "but I miss whoever that guy was." Nate didn't answer. That man no longer existed. A week later came another message. "Jeremy's gone. Mom's falling apart. Eli won't talk to her. You win. Is that what you wanted?" And that's when Nate understood. It had never been about winning. It had always been about restoring his self-worth. For years, he'd been the silent backbone of a family built on deception. He worked. He showed up. He was loyal. He never strayed. And when the betrayal came to light, he didn't plead for pity. He left with the part of himself that hadn't yet been shattered. Now, he felt whole, not elated, not bitter, just steady. He sent one final reply. "Tell Eli I hope he becomes a better man than I ever was. And tell your mother, thank you. Losing her saved me." Then he blocked the number, not out of spite, not as punishment, but because he refused to crawl back through the wreckage he'd already left behind. Then came the emails from Camille. The first was remorseful. "I know I hurt you, but vanishing like this, that's cruelty." He deleted it. The next, angry. "You really think this is fair? You walked away." Still, no response. Then desperation. "You ruined me. I gave up everything for you and the kids, and you ran like a coward." He read each word like someone watching the last embers of a fire devour what was left of a once beautiful home. He remembered the woman who used to hold his hand during storms, the laughter that once echoed through their kitchen. But he also remembered the betrayal, the pictures, the lies that unraveled their life quietly and completely. Camille hadn't simply cheated, she'd rewritten their history and now she wanted to edit the ending. But Nate had already written his. He deleted her emails. Life in Uruguay moved on peacefully. He became a regular at the local market, learned how to make chimichurri with tips from an old man named Javier, tried paddleboarding on bright weekends, built a life that needed no apologies. Then came a letter, handwritten, no return address, the handwriting shaky. It was from Eli. "Dad, I don't know if you'll read this. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not trying to excuse anything. I just want to say I was wrong. About you. About everything. Mom told us you left like the villain, but looking back now, I see you never raised your voice, never tried to poison us against her. You just disappeared." And in that silence, I finally heard the truth. Jeremy folded the minute things got tough. But you stood your ground, quiet, steady. I should have seen it then. I don't expect anything. But if one day you feel like saying hello, I'd be grateful. Eli. Nate placed the letter gently on the kitchen counter. No tears, no smile. But deep inside, where things had long been still, something shifted. That night he walked to the dock behind his villa, lit a cigar, sat beneath a quiet moon. Forgiveness, he'd come to learn, didn't always come in dramatic gestures. Sometimes it was choosing not to reply with hurt. And maybe tomorrow, he'd write back. Not today. But maybe. Because even when bridges burn, sometimes the ashes still carry warmth. And if you're patient, you might coax a new fire from what remains. The years didn't race past Nate Callahan. They drifted like a steady tide. Calm, unforced, quietly honest. He never returned to the U.S., not because he couldn't, but because he chose not to. In Uruguay, he had found something that a lifetime of responsibility and routines had never quite offered him: quietude. He settled on a small piece of land beside a still river, where he grew lemon trees and rosemary and learned to bake bread using nothing more than his hands and a wood-fired oven. There was no buzz of financial markets, no courtroom battles. Just warmth from the sun, the scent of salt in the air, and the deep hush of solitude. Yet even peace has a pulse, and sometimes it stirs. One morning, that gentle rhythm was interrupted. Inside his mailbox was a plain package. No return address, no identifying marks, just 3 simple handwritten words: for you. Inside lay a photo, faded at the edges but unmistakable. A snapshot from their first Thanksgiving after Camille gave birth to Eli. Nate was mid-carve, smiling beneath a crumpled paper crown. Mason caught mid-laugh. Camille, behind them, watching Nate with a look both soft and distant. On the back, a message. We remember more than you think. We just didn't know how to say it. Signed, Mason. Nate held the image for a long time, his fingers brushing the worn surface, not out of sorrow, but with a sense of wonder. Had they begun to see clearly at last? Not just Camille's betrayal, but the silence he had kept, the sacrifices he had made without protest, the quiet strength with which he had borne it all. He didn't yearn for apologies. But acknowledgement? That mattered. 2 months went by. Then another message arrived, this time a video call. It was from Eli. Nate hesitated, hand hovering, then clicked accept. Eli's face appeared. Older, tired, but still unmistakably his son. Hi, Dad, he began, voice trembling slightly. I know it's been a while. Nate waited. I just needed to tell you, I understand now. Everything, what you carried, what she did, what we did, and I'm really sorry, I mean that. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was almost sacred. Healing. Nate sat back, exhaled, and gave a slow, thoughtful nod. That's a good place to start, he said at last. They talked for hours, no masks, no need for explanations, just honesty, just heart. A month passed. Then Mason arrived in Uruguay. Alone. No announcement, no online trail, just a single duffel and an awkward hug. They cooked together, discussed work, swapped travel stories. The kind of easy, meandering talks fathers and sons can have when time has sanded down old wounds and made room for real connection. Camille never called. Jeremy didn't either. Later, Mason mentioned she'd moved back in with her parents, still angry, still clutching the version of the past that suited her narrative. Nate didn't probe. He didn't need to. Because this was never about revenge. It was about finding himself again. He had stepped away from a life that bled him dry, preserved the fortune he had built from his own labor, refused to let resentment author his future. He had chosen a life of stillness, and eventually the people who truly cared came to understand the value of that choice. Nate didn't triumph by lashing out. He triumphed by walking away from those who expected him to vanish quietly and deciding instead to live on his own terms, with quiet conviction. He rebuilt not from anger, but from intention, alone at first. Then gradually, with the few who finally saw the man he had always been. Not all endings are wrapped in celebration, but sometimes the softest ones are the most complete. And that's where we leave this story. If it touched you, feel free to share your thoughts below. Thank you for being part of the journey. Until next time. Take care, friend.